I'm going to talk about something very non-controversial. Gaza and Israel and what really is happening there. And you do not want to miss that.
This is the Kevin Trudeau Show.
I am exposing the corruption in government and in major multinational corporations. We're telling you the things that they don't want you to know that will make your life better.
All right, so I got to talk about Gaza. Next week, by the way, I am going to be Kevin Trudeau Guru. I'm going to tell you about the secrets of joy and happiness, the 5 keys to joy and happiness, and the secret method of how to meditate. So I will cover that next week. Make sure you pass this on to everybody. And I'm going to encourage you, subscribe if you're not a subscriber. Hit the subscribe button. There's 3 things you got to do to get the numbers up so that we make this channel really have a positive impact on people. Number 1, you have to subscribe. Number 2, you have to share this show with everybody you know. And number 3, leave a comment. That's how the metrics gets working. And you can click on this often, by the way. And even if you click on it for 5 or 10 minutes, that also helps the metric. So that way we get in better positions and all that jazz. All right, so let's talk about Gaza. We have a situation. Now, I have good news for you, by the way. I have very good news. Right now, today, as I'm recording this, there are no wars going on anywhere in the world. As a matter of fact, in the last 10 years, there's not been a war on planet Earth. As a matter of fact, in the last 50 years, there has not been a war on planet Earth. Some of you are thinking, what the hell is he talking about? A war is defined as when one country declares war against another country. The United States has not declared war against anyone since they declared war against Italy, Japan, and Germany, and I think some of their allies, in the 1940s. They declared war in 1941 against Japan, immediately then after Germany and Italy, the Axis powers. But since then, the United States has never been in a war. Oh, Vietnam. Oh, that wasn't a war, that was a police action. Korea, that wasn't a war. Actually, maybe they did declare war against Korea. I'm not sure about that. But Vietnam was not a war, police action. When America invaded Afghanistan with the army and killed hundreds of thousands of people with tanks, that wasn't a war. When General Schwarzkopf had 500,000 soldiers and they invaded into Kuwait and Iraq and they fought the Iraqi army and Air Force, that wasn't a war. What the hell was it? When the Russians went in with their army and Air Force and Marines into Afghanistan and fought the Mujahideen, which was the army of Afghanistan for 12 years, that wasn't a war. When armies all throughout Africa and all throughout the war go and fight other armies, they're not wars. When the UK army went and invaded the Falkland Islands, that wasn't a war, even though they fought the army of the Falkland Islands. When America went into Grenada and fought the army there, that wasn't a war. There's been no declarations of war. We'll talk about that another time. We all know this is a big joke. There's wars going on all over the place because armies are fighting other countries' armies. Those are wars. Oh, Russia, by the way, good news, is not at war against Ukraine. Even though there's, 1 million casualties? And the Russian Army and Air Force and Navy are fighting the Ukrainian Air Force, Navy, and Army. One country's military is fighting another country's military, but it's not a war. What the hell is it? Okay, it's a scam is what it is. So we have a situation going on in the Middle East with Israel and Palestine. Oh, you can't call it Palestine because Palestine doesn't exist. It's the Palestinians. So there's a few things here. If you look in the news today, you have what's called the right-wing media and the left-wing media. So in America, and this varies around the world, but in America we have MSNBC, which is the most liberal left, And you have CNN, which is close to MSNBC. They're liberal left. ABC, CBS, and NBC are all liberal left. As a matter of fact, all the mainstream media is liberal left. And you have Fox, which is conservative right. Okay? So you have little lonely Fox over here, the conservative right, and everybody else in the mainstream media, left. New York Times, left. Wall Street Journal, left. Boston Globe, super left. They're all left. Okay. There's only Fox, which is right. So when you look at the news, Fox says anti-Israeli protesters, obviously anti-Semites, because they're anti-Israeli. Anti-Israel protesters. When you look at all the rest of the media, pro-Palestinian protesters. Do you understand that? Pro-Palestinian, that's the left. Anti-Israel, that's the right. This is how you are being manipulated by the mainstream media. If you're anti-Israel, you're bad, right? Because then you're an anti-Semite. If you're pro-Palestinian, then you're good, because pro is good. That's why the right calls it pro-life. But the left calls it anti-abortion. Do you see the difference? Okay. We'll put that aside. So let's talk about the Palestinians and the Israelis. These people have been at war forever. The children of Palestine, or the children of Palestinians, or the Palestinian children, the Arab or Muslim group that lives in that region, primarily in the West Bank and in Gaza, but there are Palestinians all throughout Israel, but they're Muslim. That group goes to school and are taught from the time they're 1 year old that Jews and Israelis are evil and the state of Israel needs to be wiped off the earth and every Jew has to be killed. Look, this isn't me saying it. This is what is being promoted in the schools. So those children obviously are going to grow up a little bit skewed against the Jews and against Israel. Now you have the schools in Israel where they say, this land is ordained to us by God, and anybody who lives on it who's not Jewish should be killed. That's the most extreme version of the Jewish teaching. It's not the majority, but it's the extreme version. The Palestinian one is pretty much everyone. It's still the extreme version, but it's taught to everyone. All right, so we have obviously some problems here. And this is similar to in America, where in the South, a white person would grow up and being taught in the KKK, the Ku Klux Klan, that anybody who has black skin is a subhuman. Okay, that's what they were taught, that the white race is superior to any other race, especially a race that has darker skin, and a Jew. So these little kids are programmed with this junk and garbage and prejudice. And when they grow up, they get all this negative, prejudicial garbage programming in their mind. Same thing that's happening all around the world. And this happens both ways. You know, people of dark color, people of color, people who have an African heritage in many communities are programmed to hate white people and programmed to think that they are a victim always. All right, so we know this. There's programming going on. These are, we call them beliefs. Prejudices. We call it prejudiced. Stereotypical racist belief. Prejudicial belief. Racist being defined as believing that one race is superior to another race, and other races are subhuman. That's what racism is. I got yelled at by somebody in the comments because I told my maid, who's Mexican, when she says Mr. Kevin, I said, no, in English you don't say Mr. Kevin. Learn English properly. The proper grammar is it's Mr. Trudeau. When I talked to one of my black friends, and he said, what that is? I says, you don't end the sentence with a verb. It's not what that is. You don't end a sentence in English with a verb. It ain't what that is, question mark. It's what is that. The verb goes in the middle. What is that? That's the proper way to speak English. You don't say what that is. You end a sentence with a verb in German, but not in English. And somebody said I was being racist because I pointed out the proper way to speak English. That's not racist. That's helping a person speak better English. Just like when I'm in Germany and I speak poor German, somebody corrects me. Thank you. And when I'm in Italy and I talk to somebody, parli italiano? Sì. And then I start to talk in Italian, then they laugh and they correct my poor Italian. I say, thank you. I don't say, you're a racist. What's wrong with you? So in Gaza and Israel, you don't know what's going on. You only know what the media wants you to know. Think about that. So let's go back in history. And this is really important because if you understand this concept, I'm going to leave you with this concept today. You will then increase your awareness and increase your consciousness and increase your happiness to levels that you've never understood. Because you'll realize just how manipulated you are by the media and how susceptible to the negative influence you are. And once you start releasing yourself from this power, you become more empowered. And you become more cause of your environment instead of an effect. Back in 1941, Japan attacked Pearl Harbor in the Hawaiian Islands, the American air base. America said this was a sneak attack. America said Japan did not declare war against us. They surprised us. There was no declaration of war, but they just attacked us without a declaration of war. That's what America told the public. We now know that's a bold-faced lie. Japan did declare war, and then after they declared war, that's when they attacked. The Japanese are honorable people, and they would not do something that is such a dishonorable, despicable act of a sneak attack. The Japanese government was honorable in terms of the way wars are fought. They believe certain things were acceptable, but one thing that is not is a sneak attack against an enemy that you haven't declared war against. They did declare war, but the American government needed the American people to be outraged because the majority of Americans at the time did not want to enter into war against Japan. They did not want to enter into war against Germany or Italy. They said it's the Europeans' problems. It's the Asians and the Chinese problem. It's not our problem. We're isolated. The majority of Americans were isolationists. They wanted to be by themselves, leave us alone. We don't want to go to war. The American government wanted to go to war. How did we do this? We allowed Japan to kill 2,000 American servicemen without warning them. But the American government did do one thing. They said, we know we are now at war against Japan. And in fact, the US government knew that Japan was going to attack Pearl Harbor. And the American government in Washington sat around and they said, we have to make it look like it's a sneak attack, but we don't want to lose our carriers. So let's call Pearl Harbor and have them take all the carriers out at 3 o'clock in the morning and go on maneuvers. That way, when the Japanese come, they'll only be able to sink some of the old World War I ships that don't really matter. They'll kill some U.S. servicemen. That's okay. They're expendable. Then we'll be outraged and we'll get a declaration of war by Congress, and now we'll be at war finally. And we'll have the American people behind us. That was the plan. So think about this. Japan's military attacks a military base in Hawaii and kills over 2,000 U.S. servicemen. This was such a despicable, horrible act that America, so righteous, got up in front of Congress. The president, Roosevelt, said, "This despicable act, we will not stand for 2,000 Americans to have died at those horrible Japanese. I ask you to declare war against the imperial Japanese government, and I want war against them, and I want war to continue against them until they unconditionally surrender. And it will be total war." And America just stood up and said, "Yes! How dare the Japanese kill 2,000 Americans? Let's declare war, and let's never, ever stop until Japan comes to its knees and declares unconditional surrender. And we are behind you, Mr. President. Make it total war. Bomb the hell out of those cities. Kill all those damn Japanese civilians. Drop atomic bombs on 2 cities. Kill hundreds of thousands of civilians. Kill them all until they get on their knees and surrender unconditionally to America. Because we got 2,000 American servicemen dead, and Japan is going to pay." And everyone was behind it. And some of you going, yeah. Some of you around the world don't even know that's what happened, but that's what happened. America wanted every Japanese killed because they dared to attack us and kill 2,000 Americans. And there was no ceasefire. Americans wouldn't stand for a ceasefire. We're not stopping, and we're not going to negotiate. Unconditional surrender. Kill hundreds of thousands of men, women, and children, civilians. Kill all the children. Kill all the women. Drop bombs on those cities in Japan. Kill millions of them. Who cares? Until they unconditionally surrender. And every American back then said, yes, that is the right thing to do. So now we have a situation in Israel where the military of the Palestinians, called Hamas, does a sneak attack against Israel. But the sneak attack is not against a military organization. The sneak attack is against Israeli civilians. Hamas military comes in, crosses the border with their hidden tunnels, sneak attacks Israel, and kills 2,000 civilians and takes 500 hostage. Maybe they killed 1,800, something like that. And they took several hundred hostage. And Israel stood up, Netanyahu, and said there was a sneak attack. Almost 2,000 civilians were killed by the military of the Palestinians, Hamas, and they've taken hundreds hostage. And Netanyahu said, we are now at war with Hamas. And why is it okay for America to say we're going to war against Japan and we're not going to end it until there's an unconditional surrender? And why was it okay for America to drop 2 atomic bombs on civilian cities, killing hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of thousands of women and children? Why was that okay? And why is it not okay that Israel doesn't have the same position? What if Netanyahu said, just in the same way that America went to war with Japan, when Japan did a sneak attack and killed 2,000 servicemen, Israel's now going to war against Hamas, and we're going to kill civilians. We're going to drop bombs on cities, just like America did to Japan. And we're not going to stop until they come to us on their knees and beg for an unconditional surrender. Why isn't that okay? I'm not saying it's the right thing to do, by the way. War is horrible. Killing anyone is horrible. But I want you to think about how people are outraged at Israel and demanding a ceasefire. How come nobody demanded a ceasefire for America? Stop bombing Germany. Why are you killing all these civilians in Germany? Why are you bombing cities? Why are you bombing cities in Italy and killing civilians? Why are you bombing cities in Japan and killing civilians? How come nobody was saying, we need to have a ceasefire, we need to have a ceasefire, we need to have a ceasefire? Because they were at war. But today, everyone's screaming, Hamas comes in, kills 2,000 Israelis, men, women, and children, takes them hostage, and they're demanding a ceasefire. Why isn't it okay for Israel to say, we now have total war against Hamas, and we're not stopping until they come to us on their knees, in the same way that America said that Japan had to come to on their knees, and the same way that both Britain and France and the United States said that Germany had to come on their knees and surrender unconditionally. And I'm not saying that's the right thing to do. I'm just letting you know that the media is portraying something that you haven't thought about, because they're portraying something to get you think in a certain way without giving you other things to consider. And I'm not telling you which way to think is right or wrong, because to me, killing should stop always. People should sit at the table and negotiate and work it out. Unfortunately, throughout history, that hasn't worked out against the Pakistanis and the Indians, for example. In India and Pakistan, they've been at war forever as well. And they're always fighting. You don't hear about it. In parts of Africa, tribes have been fighting forever. In America, the Native American Indians were fighting all the time. They were trying to kill everybody all the time. I mean, the Cherokee were fighting against the Sioux, and I don't know who was fighting who, but every tribe was fighting against the other. I know the Sioux fought against the Pawnee, and they were always fighting. It's the nature of man. There's been wars always. So to have this illusion or delusion that wars are going to stop is just not realistic. We wish they would. Killing anybody is wrong. We have to love everyone without condition and without exception, because killing is just purely wrong. But I want you to think about the fact that you are being misled and lied to by all media. The right-wing media, they call them anti-Israel protesters, anti-Semites. The left-wing media calls them pro-Palestinian protesters who want to stop killing and stop the war. But think about it. If you were the president of Israel and you had a sneak attack on your country, what would you do? Would you say somebody has to pay? I got to stop this. How do I stop this? We thought there was no problem, and all of a sudden we have all these. How do you protect your citizens? And then you think of the poor Palestinian people, because, hey, we don't know. Israel says that the majority of Palestinians work for Hamas secretly. And we knew that was true in Germany. We knew that was true in Japan, where the innocents weren't. They were so innocent. I'm just a woman with 3 children. And then the American serviceman turns his back and she pulls out a knife and stabs him. And there are reports of that in Japan over and 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 over again, both in Germany and in Japan, where the innocent women and the innocent child is so brainwashed that they go, oh, I'm innocent, because they're taught, if the American comes or the French comes or the Brit comes, just claim innocence, and then when they turn their back, kill them. So what do? It's a terrible, horrible situation. It's horrible. It's always been horrible, and it will always be horrible. The conditions in Gaza with the Palestinians and the Israelis, just like the conditions with the Pakistanis and the Indians, it's never going to change. There is not going to be nirvana. There is not going to be a utopia. There's not going to be peace and hugging and kissing and intermarrying and everybody happy with one another. You are delusional to think that will happen. It's never happened since the beginning of mankind. Cain and Abel started the whole, for those of you who know the Bible, Cain and Abel started the whole killing of one another. One killed his brother out of jealousy. And if it happened back then, and it's happened ever since throughout the history of man, without ceasing, it's always there. The planet is filled with killings, filled with wars, even though you don't call them war today. It's always going to happen. What's the point of this? The point is two things. Number one, when you look at the media, know that you're being misled and lied to. It's as simple as seeing one group say, anti-Israeli protesters take over building. And the other media looks at the exact same situation. Pro-Palestinian protesters take stand. One sounds very peaceful and good. The other one sounds violent and horrible. They're describing the same thing. How are you imagining it? You're not in Palestine. You're not in Gaza. You're not in the West Bank. You're not in Israel. You don't know. And even if you live there, you have a microcosm experience personally. And the rest of your thinking comes from what other people tell you, other people's opinions, or what the media propaganda machine is brainwashing you with. So what do we do with Gaza and Israel? If you're not there, what are you protesting for? If you really are concerned about there, go over there and help them. All these people in these colleges that are like, oh, I want to protest. We should have a ceasefire. We should have a ceasefire. You don't even know the conditions over there. Why don't you go over there and help? Oh, because you're afraid. You don't want to make that big of a commitment. So you'll just break into buildings and become a mob and violent. Hey, if you have an opinion, that's fine. Share your opinion. Voice it. Do it in a peaceful way. You don't have to break windows. You don't have to take over buildings. You don't have to break rules and break laws, become violent. Make your opinion heard. But you don't have an opinion because you're not there. You don't know anything. Why are we listening to the guy who's got a towel around his head, hiding? You got to listen to me. I know everything. You got to listen to me. You got to listen to me. There should be a ceasefire. Stop fighting. Stop the killing. Are we listening to this guy? And some of you think, but Kevin, we should stop the killing. Of course we should stop all killing everywhere. Every human life is precious. Every human life is precious, and you'll never stop but you'll never stop the violence cycle. The cycle of violence and the cycle of wars, whether you call them wars or not, it has gone on from the beginning of time and will not end, so stop being delusional. So what do? We send love and compassion to everyone. We love people without condition and without exception. This is the secret of true enlightenment and spirituality. No condemnation and no criticism, even when it's so hard not to condemn or criticize. Because once you start thinking of criticizing or condemning, you are then established in the world of duality, of right and wrong and good and evil. And if you want to be enlightened and spiritual and self-realized and full of joy and peace, just simply love everyone. Have compassion for everyone. And compassion means know that everyone has a right to be happy and a right to pursue their dreams and a right to feel love. Have compassion for people. Never criticize and condemn the person. And don't criticize and condemn the acts, because people are acting out based on their own karma and their own samskaras. Just love them. And that's the hardest thing in the world to do. To love without condition and without exception. I'm here to tell you that all of your dreams in life can come true. You have what it takes to make it in life. You have inside you the ability to be joyful and at peace, regardless of the chaos that's going around the world. Don't be anti this, anti that. Just send love. Choose love. Send love. Be love. I'm Kevin Trudeau. This is the Kevin Trudeau Show. Everything they don't want you to know about. God loves you, and so do I. Thanks for watching. Make sure you hit that subscribe button and share this with everyone you know. I'm Kevin Trudeau. Looking forward to seeing you Wednesday, 1 o'clock, Chicago time.